Ines Smyth, and I work for Oxfam Great Britain. I spent this morning at the consultation meeting in London on the gender sustainability reporting. It is important for NGOs to be present in such consultations, partly because we are a voice among many others, partly because the issue of private enterprises reporting on their own sustainability from a gender perspective has to be one of the concerns for organizations working on poverty. So that's the basics of it. What poverty has to do with gender inequality, it perhaps needs to be explaining at length, but the simplest way is that very often it is gender inequality that make women more vulnerable to poverty, but also perhaps more importantly in this context, makes it hard for women to contribute to productivity, to growth, to development, and so the connection for me are very obvious. There are ways in which NGOs interact with the private sector that bode well for the future in terms of recognizing each other as important actor in a common efforts towards the elimination of poverty, and also a fairer world, a fairer on the point of view of men and women have the same rights, and workers having good rights, and migrants having the same rights. And so it's part of a project in which I hope we all have a stake. What was interesting today, I think, given the number of the origin and who people present today represented, I think it was a very constructive meeting. I think there was a quite uncanny similarity of opinions, particularly on two things. I felt there was a very healthy discussion, but fundamentally on very similar ground. One was on the necessity to focus on both narrowly the workplace, but also equally important, the relationship and the conditions that pertain outside the workplace. So I thought that was a very interesting discussion, very fruitful. The other area of discussion that I found particularly interesting was around what are the principles that govern what we are discussing, and whether the business case for gender equality is necessary and sufficient condition to make this effective, or whether actually a rights and an equality discourse is more appropriate, more realistic. And I think what we came down to is that both are important. There was, in fact, two more things. The absolutely essential importance of clarifying those relationships between the workplace, productivity, equal opportunity for men and women, and the relationships with the household. So that was an important discussion. And finally, the discussion around the value chain, the way in which production is structured for a long time. It is nothing new. Is in a devolved way with many bits linking up value and market chains, and that means that any guidelines, any reporting are made on gender equality and in the context of sustainability are more difficult, because of course you don't have a simple block of an enterprise. But at the same time, complexity is what we deal with nowadays, and we can't not do this, because if we do not recognize the nature of the value chain, we will not be addressing the real issues.
I have you, and you can